So it's 9 o'clock.
Right. Let's start. Yeah.
Yeah, we can start.
We'll start, yeah.
Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehno Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Namaste. So we'll start today's session. So last time we stopped at 5.16 and 17, 15.16 and 17. 15.16 says, Dvavimo Purusho Loke. There are two Purushas in this world, Kshara and Akshara, the imperishable and the perishable. And Kshara is a Sarvani Bhutani. All the beings are perishable, and the Akshara is imperishable. So what we understand from this shloka is that our bodies are perishable, but the soul within us is imperishable. Now in the next verse, 15.17, he says that there is a Uttam, higher Purusha, another Purusha who's higher than these two, and who's called the Paramatma, and he supports these our world of experiences. So we have the Purushottam, we have the Purusha, and we have the So we stopped at this last Sunday. So are there any questions on this? Was this clear?
Yes, it should be.
Yes, okay. So there are these three forms of this same Purusha. So shall we read 15.18?
Yes. Yasmat ksharamatoham aksharaadapi chottamaha atosmi loke vede cha pathitah purushottamaha.
Yeah. So he says that he's using the word atit, that transcend. Since I'm wholly beyond, or atit, the perishable world of matter, of kshetra, and I'm superior even to the imperishable soul, the jivatma, hence I'm known as Purushottam, the supreme self, in the world as well as in the Vedas. So the Vedas are talking about the Purushottam. This Purushottam has become the Prakriti, this Purushottam has become the Jivatma, the Atma, the Paramatma, and the Prakriti. Now, this is the essence of the Vedas. This is the knowledge which we have to gain. There is nothing beyond this. This knowledge is not so easy to gain. I don't know if we can actually experience that everything is a form of Purusha. This Prakriti, this body, everything around us is nothing but Purusha. It's just a form of Purusha. Though it is ever changing, it is perishable, but it is Purusha, it is eternal. Last Sunday also we spoke of this fact that Prakriti is changing, but it is eternal. The bodies will die, go back to dust, and emerge again. So it's just a changing, eternally changing process. But we will grieve because we see the change and it's not acceptable to us. So in the very beginning of this chapter, he said, Asanga shastrena dridena chitva, that you have to go beyond this attachment. You have to understand that everything is Purusha. So this is a difficult proposition, to be detached and to accept changes which are happening and to see Purusha in everything. It's a different form of Purusha. So then where does this take us? When we start seeing this, what happens then? So in the next verse, he's telling us what happens when we start seeing Purusha everywhere.
Here one question, Ashaji, is
Yes.
because it is said here that I am wholly beyond the perishable world and superior even to the imperishable soul.
Correct.
So does it mean that the Purushottam does not stay in the Jivatma? So is the Purushottam there in the Bhutas or it is beyond the Bhutas?
So the Purushottam,
Is
see,
it separate? I mean, we are separate from the Purushottam or Purushottam is there inside us?
the Purushottam has lent his power to us through the Mukhya Pran. The Purushottam has just given his power to us. Like the head of the yeah.
So then Purushottam is separate, is it, from us?
Yes, in a way we could say it is separate till we realize him fully and become a part of him. See, it is we have to be constantly aware of the Purusha, that the Purusha is giving us his power to function. It's like the head of the company. He's not the owner of the company. Like, see, Vinoba Bhave puts it very simply to the jail, inmates of the jail. So in a corporate language, maybe we will request Sunil ji to explain later. But in a normal way, uh, he says there is a master of the house and then there is a servant who's very efficient. The master has given all the power to the servant to manage the household. But the servant has to be constantly aware that there is a master above me. I have the power. I have been given the power to, to carry on the day-to-day duties, and I must exercise the power in a very right manner. But I have to be constantly aware that this house is not mine. It belongs to my master, and my master can pull me up if I do any wrong. So, in a simple way. So the power which comes to the servant comes from the master. So Vinoba says that we are like Hanuman, the eternal servant, and there is that Ram, the eternal master, and there is this Prakriti through which I serve my master. I efficiently manage the things around me so that my master is happy. I do the right things. But all the power to do everything comes from that master, which is the Purushottam. He has lent his powers to us, but he is basically a witness. So I use the powers given to me and I do the right action. And finally, when I finish my job, I merge into him. I don't know now. This is understandable or this is clear. This is how this chapter is explained.
See, it is a peculiar nature of Purusha that it is both immanent in Prakriti and yet transcendent. The same goes for consciousness. You could call Purusha as consciousness, though I suspect that the relationship between Purushottam and Jivatma is that between Purusha and consciousness. Okay, now these are all very, approximate ways of saying.
Okay.
But now it's so why the Purusha is like that is it's not for us to say. I mean, these that's a mystery, which is that of existence itself. But this is the dual nature, that it is while it is at a very core, and yet it is kind of above. See, that is what explains the fact that while the reality, while the absolute, while what we seek is not outside of us, it's right within. And yet we have to work towards realizing it. See, practically or logically, what is within, should not require any effort to achieve, right? It's already there. In fact, it's the closest to our being that could be. our usual, logical Aristotelian logic goes only so far in helping us understand. Um, um, but here, so we simply have to, I feel, accept the nature of Purusha as both immanent as well as transcendent.
Yeah, till we realize it fully, because we can't explain it. But as of now, we have to just take it that there are Purusha is in three forms. He is the master, he is the Jivatma, and he is the Prakriti. Mahendra sir, would you like to share your views on this?
I think his question is whether Purushottam lies within us also. So I would definitely differ and agree that whatever lies in us, the same lies outside also. In fact, there's no question of outside, inside. It is permeating everybody, everything. Entire cosmos is permeated by Purushottama. So he is permeated us also. We cannot be separate from them. Whatever we are here, it is because of that one. You name it Purushottam, you name it Purusha, you name it consciousness, whatever is a name. See, he is manifested all over, and whatever is happening because of his presence only. We are often reading Purnamadha. This is complete. Purnamidam, whatever lies in us, that is also complete. Purnam Purnat Udachyate. Ourself is also has come out from that only. And if this Purna has come out of that, what remains is also Purna. So everything is complete. It is manifested not only in us, it is manifested in the entire cosmos. In fact, we can't distinguish. The two. The shloka and other verses are trying by naming it Purushotta, Purushottam, Jiva, consciousness, or so many words. But the fact is that inseparable, it is present everywhere, including us also. There is no difference in whatever lies in us and whatever lies outside. That's what my conviction is.
Correct. Very good, sir. Yeah, true. So are you clear?
Purushottam has been introduced only in this chapter. Earlier, it is there as a way of addressing Lord Krishna, but as a concept, I think Purushottam has been introduced in this chapter only, or has it occurred earlier? I just was curious to know.
No. So
Earlier it was
Chapter
only
10.
Purusha, but in this chapter, it's a new concept in a way.
Chapter 10, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutaya Yasita.
yeah,
He's
but
naming his Purushottama, no doubt, but he himself is saying, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutaya Yasita. I am present in every being. We are just naming it, just to distinguish. Maybe just to give how he is functioning in us. I think just to illustrate that, a distinction has been made in the Purusha and the Purushottam. That's all. I think otherwise they are same.
yeah, so you're right. This is the first chapter in which this Purushottam has been explained. Now you successfully brought Arjun from that state of delusion to this state of highest knowledge, telling Arjun that everything is me, everything. I am Purushottam, I am in you, I am in everybody, I am in this world around you. And so once you have gained this knowledge, then what do you have to do? You have to do your duties. Basically, he's getting him to that state of knowledge that understand that everything is me, it's just my play. You have a role to play, You have a part to play in life and understand deeply and follow that path. So we'll read one more verse and then we'll again discuss on the same point. Yo mameva sammudo.
यो मामेवम सम्मूढ़ो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत.
This is a very beautiful verse. He says that the wise man, a sammudo, who realizes me as a supreme person, as a Purushottam, sarvavid. So he, sarvavid, he is an all-knowing, bhajati mam, with his whole being, sarva bhavena, with his whole being he worships me. So the wise man who realizes me, who realizes this Purushottam, that there is a supreme power, but I'm not separate from that power. He has given me the power, no doubt, but I'm not separate from him. My identity is because of him. So even the servant has an identity because of the master, even if we go by what how Vinoba is explaining to us. So he says that supreme person, when I know him totally, when I understand that there's nothing in this world besides him, then what do? All my being, I worship him. Now, what is this worship he's talking about? Worship is not I just sit down in one place and for half an hour and I worship him. Worship is not that. That I'm aware of him all the time. He doesn't leave my being. He's in my whole being. He's there all the time. And then I do what is to be done. The next verse is going to tell us that. So shall we read the next verse?
Yeah, just half a minute.
Yeah.
इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नघ एतद् बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत.
So he says, the esoteric teaching has been imparted by me. Grasping it in essence, man becomes truly wise and his mission in life is accomplished. He says, Etad Buddhva, knowing this, Buddhimansya, I become Buddhiman. The man becomes Buddhiman when he truly understands that Purusha is everywhere. When he truly sees the Purusha. Yeah, God is everywhere. But do I mean it? I mean, do I really know it? It's so easy for me to say God is everywhere. But there are moments when I totally forget about God. I come under the situation, I start angry, I become miserable. But he says that when the man has truly grasped this knowledge, he becomes truly wise, and he says that he knows what is to be done. His life is accomplished. So he says, Krita Krityascha Bharata. Krita Krityascha. What is to be done and what is that what has to be done. He does what is to be done. That word Krita Krityascha is very important. It says he does what is to be done. When I've understood that God is everywhere, then there is no attachment in me. I simply do what is to be done. There is no doubt in me. There is no delusion in me. I become clear. When I truly understand the Purushottam is all that is there. Everything is Purushottam. In this verse, he's saying Iti Guhya Tamam Shastram. It's a very, very deep, secret science. It's not easy to understand. We can read through it. We've almost finished the Bhagavad Gita. We have chapters left. So he's telling Arjun that have you understood? I don't know what are our thoughts on this. We're finishing this chapter, which is the most secret of all sciences.
By the way, I wonder if Purushottam here is the same as the Purusha Vishesh in the Yoga Sutra.
Yeah.
Probably, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Let's ask Sabir Bhai.
Yeah. Okay. Or Mahendra sir.
It's the very same, sir. No doubt about it. No second thought.
It's the same, right?
Yeah, the name is different. Shape, the special Purusha. Yeah. So then this whole Prakriti.
No, so in that case, we will address this also from another standpoint when we do the sutra. So at that time, we will come again, to our, Purusha Vishesh, then we look at the differentiation. Sir, Bhupathi sir, again, we will address the issue as elucidated by yet another luminary,
Right.
in the world of yoga.
Right. Right. So this Purushottam looks like the Vishishtadvaita. The Vishishtadvaita school of Indian philosophy or Vedanta. There's Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita. It is Vishishta, but it is Advaita.
Yes.
So that's what it looks like.
Correct.
It is Vishishta. Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Sir. It is Vishishta, but yes, Advaita.
Okay. So, chapter clear?
Yeah.
Shall we wind up this chapter?
Yeah. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastri Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Purushottama Yogo Nama Panchadashodhyaya.
So we are beginning with Yoga.
See, in the 16th, sorry, sir. In the 16th shloka of the very same chapter, Vimau Purushau Loke Sharascha Aksharaha Evacha Sharaha Sarvani Bhutani Kutasto Akshara Ukkate. So we need to understand this concept between the spatial Purusha and the individual Purusha existing in everyone. And the one which is imperishable is Purushottama. But the one who is there in everyone as connected to the body is getting perished. So the body is taken as the perishable one. But at the same time, the Purusha again becomes one with the self, one with the ultimate one. So here we can connect with that concept. Yoga is also based on the Sankhya philosophy. And there is the explanation in Sankhya Karika giving us the understanding, the proof of many Purushas. So when the proof of many Purushas has been given, it is also said that there is ultimately one Vishesha Purusha, which Yoga Sutra calls it Ishvara. Somewhere this concept of Vishesha Purusha has been added in Yoga Sutra, but it is not there in Sankhya. Sankhya continues with duality. And here also we need to connect with that aspect. I hope this is getting connected again.
Yes, yes.
We can start with the next one.
Yeah.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir. Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi. Danan Damasya Yajnasya. Swadhyaya Stapa Arjavam.
So we'll read the 3 verses. We'll do one by one. So he's now listing 26 qualities. When you have gained the knowledge of Purushottam, then these virtues automatically develop. Or in another way, he's telling you that when you are on this path, you need to do a reality check. How much am I progressing? So he has listed out 26 virtues, and he has listed out, he's calling this the Devi Sampati. And then he's calling the Asuric Sampati, the divine state and the devilish state, the devilish qualities or the divine qualities. Then he says, take a stock. There is a stock taking in this chapter. Where am I? Where do I stand? Do I have virtue, or still do I have the Asuric qualities? Do I have the devilish quality? So now in these, he's going to list 26 good qualities, the divine qualities. So shall we read the 3 verses and then we shall discuss?
अहिंसा सत्यम अक्रोधः त्यागः शान्तिरपरिशुनम् दया भूतेष्वलोलुप्त्वं मार्दवं वीरचापलम् तेजः क्षमा धृतिः शौचम् अद्रोहो नातिमानिता भवन्ति सम्पदं दैवीम् अभिजातस्य भारत.
So now he's starting with Abhayam. Abhaya is fearlessness. That is the first quality he's listing. Then he's saying Sattva Samshuddhir, purity of heart. Jnana Yoga Vyavastihi, steadfast in the yoga of knowledge. Dana, charity. Dhamma, control of senses. Yajna, sacrifice. Swadhyaya, study of the scripture. Tapa, austerity. Arjavam is uprightness or absence of crookedness. Then he says ahimsa, non-violence. Satya, akrodha, absence of anger. Tyaga, shanti. Apeshunam, which is you don't find fault with others, into fault finding. Then daya, aloluptvam, uncovetousness. You don't desire things too much. Madhavam, gentleness, mildness. Reer, modesty. Achapalam, absence of fickleness. Then the third verse, he says, Teja, Kshama, forgiveness. Ti, fortitude. Shaucha, purity. Adroha, you have enmity towards none. Na atimanita. Na atimanita means not over pride, or basically humility. Now these are the qualities which divine qualities. Okay, so he says these, Arjun, these are the marks of him who is born with divine endowments. So basically how Vinoba explains this, he says the first virtue which he's listing is Abhay. And the last virtue which he's listing is Na Atimanita. So he says this is like a battlefield. This is a battlefield where these virtues and vices are pitted against each other. Now the virtues have a commander. The commander is Abhay. Without this commander, without this Abhay, the other qualities cannot develop. None of the other qualities can develop if there is fear in the mind. And this Abhay can only come when we've understood the Purushottam. When we've understood that we are eternal, we are a part of that eternal Purusha, we are eternal, then where is the fear? The body is going to die, but the body is also just going to reset. When I have truly understood this, then naturally the first quality will be Abhay. There is no fear. But then he says that at the end, when you have a battle, you have a commander in the front, but you also have somebody to safeguard you behind, because there can be an attack from the rear side. Somebody can enter from the back entrance and take charge of your whole army. So he says at the end, there is humility. When there is humility, when I'm totally aware that there is a Purushottam, there is a higher principle above me, then nothing can attack me. But if that humility goes away, and if the arrogance comes in, if that I sense comes in, then everything is destroyed. So these are the 26 virtues, but the most important, abhay and humility. Na atimanita. So this is how our army should be. There should be total humility and there should be total fearlessness. Nothing can destroy us, but the one who's protecting us is not us, is but that Purushottam. So far, is this clear? Okay. So now he's described all this. So now we have to go to the next verse. So, Ashutosh sir, any questions on this? Okay. Shall we go to the next verse?
दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च क्रोधः पारुष्यमेव च अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य पार्थ सम्पदमासुरीम्.
Yeah. So now he's saying the Asuri Sampad. I'm going to describe that to you. So he says Damba. Damba is hypocrisy, showing off. Then Darpa, arrogance, pride arising from wealth, basically. Then he says Abhiman, Krodha, Parushya. Parushya is harshness or rudeness. Agnya, ignorance. This is the estate or this is the nature. Abhijatasya is of the people born with the Asuri Sampati. These are the qualities of a man who is an Asur. So shall we read the next verse, sir?
दैवी सम्पद् विमोक्षाय निबन्धायासुरी मता मा शुचः सम्पदं दैवीम् अभिजातोऽसि पाण्डव.
He says the divine endowment has recognized as conducive to liberation. Moksha. The divine demon is going to lead you to bondage. Nibandha. Then he says, don't grieve, Arjun, for you are born with divine propensities. So the divine is going to lead us to freedom, liberation, and the Asuric qualities, though they may appear very powerful and enticing initially, but in the long run, they will lead us to bondage. They will not take us towards the Purushottam. We will be caught up in this world of birth and death. So, the next verse, please.
So it means that these qualities are inborn. We can't do anything about them.
No, they are in us. See, these qualities are there in all of us. Nobody is spared of the good and the bad. It's just that the bad qualities have to be surpassed or conquered, and the good qualities have to be developed. Nobody can escape these Asuric Sampati. They are there in us. This hypocrisy which he's talking about is there. Darpa, arrogance is there. Abhiman is there. Krodh is there. Harshness is there. It's all there in us. But as we go more and more towards Purushottam, they will fade away and they will never come back if we maintain that humility. They will never come back. This we've already done in chapter 14 when he's talking about Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Basically, you have to get into the sattvic state. These qualities are nothing but Sattva. They are there in all of us. Some are more and some are less. We have to develop them.
Then, but the word Abhijat means it is you're born with the divine propensities.
Correct. You're born with it. See, in this previous chapter, we said that the chitta is taken away. So if we can turn to 15.10.
15.10.
Sorry, 15.8. 15.8, sir.
15.8.
Yeah. What does the verse say? That even as a wind wafts sense from, so too the Jivatma, who is the lord of the body, taking the mind and the senses from the body, which it leaves behind, forthwith migrates to the body which it acquires. So we spoke about the Sukshma Sharir and the Sthula Sharir. The body is going to die, but the Jivatma is going to live. And the Jivatma will be born in another body. And he will be born with this aggregate of these and vasanas. We already studied that in the 15th chapter. The first 15th chapter is saying this Jivatma and this body is a fragrant of my own self. Mamai Vansho Jiva Oke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. It is Sanatan, but it is the ansh of me. That which is within you is a part of me. And that functions with the mind and the senses. And then when the body dies, the mind and the senses don't die. That Jivatma lives and it is born in another body. Now it is born with whatever work I do, karma I do, I'm born with the result. So if I have endeavored in this life, if I have strived to be good, then I'm born with the divine endowments. Otherwise, if I wasted my life in eating, drinking, then I'm born with the asuric endowment. So we'll read the next verse.
Yeah. द्वौ भूतसर्गौ लोकेऽस्मिन् दैव आसुर एव च दैवो विस्तरशः प्रोक्त आसुरं पार्थ मे शृणु.
So he says there are only two types of men in the world. One possessing divine nature and the other possessing the demonic disposition. The type who's possessing the divine nature been dealt with at length. Now hear from me about those possessing demonic disposition. So we'll read the next verse.
प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जनान विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारो न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते.
So he says that, these two types of beings are there. And men of demonic nature, they don't know what is pravritti and what is nivritti. What is action, the way of what should be done and what should not be done. They don't know the way of action and they don't know the way of renunciation. They don't know. They don't understand. So men possessing, they know not what is right activity. They don't know abstinence from activity. Hence, they possess neither purity nor good conduct nor even truthfulness. Shaucham na picha acharo na satyam teshu vidyate. They don't understand what is right conduct, what should be done, what is pure and what is impure. They don't understand truth and untruth. We all are in the same boat. We all have these same qualities. Sometimes when we are angry, when we are overpowered by anger, then we lose all awareness. We become the asuras. We forget what is right and wrong. Anyway, we read the next verse.
असत्यम् अप्रतिष्ठन्ते जगदाहुर अनीश्वरम् अपरस्पर सम्भूतं किमन्या कामहेतुकम्.
Yeah.
किमन्यत् कामहेतुकम्.
Correct. The men of disposition say to this say that this world is without any foundation, absolutely unreal and godless, Anishwaram, and it says that it is brought forth by the mutual union of the male and the female. Hence, it is conceived in lust. And what else is there other than this? You see, these people who are the asuric type, it can be us, it can be anybody. Human beings, basically, who are not able to see beyond the immediate. Whatever I see is real. I see that this world is born out of the union of male and female. We don't think beyond. We don't uh, study, understand the world. We don't reflect. How did the world come about? How? People are dying, people are being born. What gives us the power? What makes the sun rise? What makes the planet grow? They don't think. They don't think about anything. They just see the immediate. And for them, this world is what? It is brought about by the union of the male and the female. Children are born, children die, and then more are born, and this world goes on. They can't think about the real nature of the world. They are established in this asatya. Asatyam pratishtham. This world is without basis, without foundation. This world is absolute. We are based in that knowledge. So basically,
It is like
short-term
it is like the Charvaka philosophy.
philosophy. Charvaka.
Philosophy of Charvaka, the Lokayat. Lokayat are like that, khao piyo maja karo.
Correct.
ऐसा नहीं है सर. वो that is a distortion of Charvaka.
I understand.
Yeah,
But at
Charvaka
the
never
same
said that.
but at the same time, they are materialist.
Yes, they are materialists in a philosophical sense, not in a
Yes.
consumerist sense. That matter is primary, and consciousness is a property of matter.
True,
That is
true.
what
But
Charvak
in-
said, no?
Yes, but through this 8th shloka, I found out likeness to that Charvaka philosophy.
Because Sabir bhai, you must be knowing, Dr. A.H. Salunke has written extensively on Charvaka philosophy.
No, I haven't read it.
In Marathi.
I would like to have that thing from you then.
Yes, Charvaka Darshan by Dr. A.H. Salunke.
Okay.
I would just, on a lighter vein, I would say that in practice, Charvakas are probably more, spiritual, so to say, than the so-called, in quotes, the spiritualists. Because, the so-called Gyanis tend to get lost in their knowledge. They tend to believe that because they have known intellectually, that they also know it Tattva Gyan. So Tattva Gyan is not the same as Buddhi Gyan. So sometimes when you are free of these notions, as in Charvaka scheme, we honestly try to live a pure life and not be distorted by false, so to say, notions of understanding. But that's anyway on the lighter side, just as an aside.
On the lighter side, yesterday there was a WhatsApp message that people who have been vaccinated feel that they have been given the shot of immortality.
That's really like it.
Anything in this material world makes us feel immortal. That applies to all of us, intellect or no intellect. Intellect is no guarantee that we are not materialistic. Anyway, so we are going on to the next verse, please.
तां दृष्टिम् अवष्टभ्य नष्टात्मानोऽल्पबुद्धयः प्रभवन्त्युग्रकर्माण क्षयाय जगतो हिताः.
Yeah. Clinging to this false view, the slow-witted men of wild disposition and terrible deeds are mankind. They are bent on destruction of the world. So this false view can overpower anybody. The Maya can overpower anybody at any step. So even in chapter 14, Vinoba writes that vigilance, you have to be totally vigilant. This tamas anytime, this God syndrome, this I syndrome. So that's what says that humility has to be there, that constant awareness that there is a God principle. The moment you forget it, you start with these false views, and then you start doing terrible deeds. And people are the enemies of mankind. Like Duryodhana is one classic example. He's holding on to that view that he is the son of Dhritarashtra and he should inherit the kingdom. There is no right and wrong. They forget what and what is wrong. And that's why Krishna is telling Arjun, you are born with divine endowments. This chapter is very easy. We can just go on one after the other. Shall we read the next verse?
कामम् आश्रित्य दुष्पूरन् दम्भमान मदान्विताः मोहात् गृहीत्वा सद्ग्राहान् प्रवर्तन्ते शुचिव्रताः.
Cherishing insatiable desires, holding on to the false doctrines through ignorance. These men of impure conduct move in the world full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance. So the desires are there, and there is total avidya. We are full of ignorance. These men of impure conduct move in the world full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance. These three things take over them, and they can't see beyond the immediate. This sensual world is there, and that's all. They can't see beyond it. We'll read the next verse, sir.
चिन्ताम् अपरिमेयाञ्च प्रलयान्ताम् उपाश्रिताः कामोपभोगपरमा एतावद् इति निश्चिताः.
So they bring themselves up to innumerable cares, ending only with death. They remain devoted to the enjoyment of sensuous pleasures, and they are firm in their belief that this is the highest limit of joy. So they have thousands of anxieties, and these anxieties remain all throughout their life because they are hoarding things. They are arrogant. They feel that, you see, Vinoba says that there are three things: power, culture, and wealth. These men of Asuric disposition hold on to these things: power, culture, and wealth in any order. So they actually have a lot of anxieties. If they are in power, they never want to be without power. They have wealth, they never want to be without wealth. Or if they have culture, if they feel being born in a high family, a royal family, noble family, they are proud of that, and they feel they can do anything. They get that God syndrome in them, and they are just devoted to the enjoyment of sensuous pleasures, and they feel that if they get that, they are happy. For them, that happiness is the highest. They don't think of higher virtues like peace or bliss. No. So this is how such people are. So we can identify, these are just basic, like I said, a reality check, where exactly we stand and what is it that we should be doing in life. We need to do a stock taking. So shall we read the next verse?
आशापाश शतैर्बद्धा कामक्रोधपरायणाः ईहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसञ्चयान्.
Yeah. So held in bondage, hundreds of kinds of expectations, and only giving themselves up to lust and anger, they strive to amass by unfair means, anyaya, hoards of money and other objects for the enjoyment of sensuous pleasure. You see, when there is greed, when there is this power, when there is money, when there's too much of wealth, then basically then it's not about the power or the wealth, it's about having it permanently. So then naturally the unfair means are going to come. This is I don't know, Dr. Saab, whenever he used to discuss about money, wealth, about aparigraha, when we used to discuss the yams and the niyams in the sutras, he used to say that greed is inherent in money. Inherent. He said you can easily come under the clutches of that. These unfair means, it's just these things inherent in this culture, and because you want to hold on to it. When you start holding on, it's nothing but attachment, and that can only lead you to an anxiety. So this is all asuric traits, where you hold on to things, where you remain attached to things, where unfair means take over.
And I think greed is not just for money and the finer things. A simple thing like overeating, when we overeat, some tasty food, also comes from greed, I feel.
Yeah, that I am the king, I can eat. Why should the others get? See, in a normal household also, people would not like to give their staff whatever they eat. See, I mean, you can bring it down to the base, to the normal today life level. There, I have a friend who has a big household, a very big house, lots of staff, and she says, I wish there was no staff because I can't eat what I want to eat. She says, if I eat the most expensive foods and I feel I'm like cheating them, I'm not giving them enough. So we are caught up with this kind of lifestyle. She says, I can't eat a mango because I have to give my servants mango, and there are, like maybe 5 or 6 of them in the house. The household is huge. So she said, it's so difficult. She said, whole day, like the kitchen goes on and they are at the proper time. You see, greed is there in every area of life. It is every area of.
So I was once having a conversation with a lady who was traveling with, back from a organic farm. Rather, they were conversing amongst themselves. So she was saying, look, I partly get organic vegetables and partly normal vegetables. Organic vegetables are for me and my husband, and the normal vegetables are for the help. आप म्यूट हो गए हैं शायद आशा जी.
It's the Purushottam Yoga that everybody is same. You see, people like Vinoba Bhave, Dr. Saab, they have lived a simple life. 4 जोड़ी कपड़े हैं, तो एक जोड़ी जूता है. Just enough, and a very, very frugal man eats. They lived on that. It's very, very difficult to give up this. It's good to study all this. I actually feel like Arjun when I start the Gita, and then again I go back to that delusion state of Arjun every time I Gita and then come to the end of the Gita. Learning, it's just a process of learning. That Purushottam Yoga has to be totally imbibed. Asuric qualities are very much in all of us, and we have to start developing the qualities. It's just that. Anyway, maybe like Krishna is giving assurance to Arjun and he says, grieve not, O Pandav, you are born with divine endowments. Maybe that can be a kind of a solace. So we read the next verse, sir.
इदमद्य मया लब्धम् इमं प्राप्स्ये मनोरथम् इदमस्ति इदमपि मे भविष्यति पुनर्धनम्.
Yeah, they say themselves, this much has been secured by me today, and now I shall realize this ambition. So much wealth is already, and yet again this shall be mine. So wealth is never enough. So I have got this much, but it's not enough. The richest man wants so money. So we'll read the next verse.
असौ मया हतः शत्रुर् हनिष्ये चापरानपि ईश्वरोऽहम् अहं भोगी सिद्धोऽहं बलवान् सुखी.
That enemy has been slain by me, and I shall kill these others too. Whoever comes in the way, I should kill them. I am the Lord of all, the enjoyer of pleasures. I'm endowed with all power, and I'm mighty, I'm happy. Because I'm mighty, I'm happy. People with powers, they don't like anybody coming in between. However old they are, they would not like to be on the seat of power. So it's in the household also, the elders would not take a back seat. There are so many elders who don't take a back, who don't allow their children over. There is fear that if I'm out of power, then nobody will care for me, nobody will respect me. So this happens at all levels, at all steps. Power again comes the driving force. Do we have any thoughts on this? Okay. Shall we go to the next verse?
That is 14, no?
Yeah, we'll go. Oh, sorry, what did I read, sir? Yeah, 14.
Yeah. Asau
Yeah.
maya hatashatrud anishye chaparanapi Ishvaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi.
So we read this, the enemy be slain by me, and I am the enjoyer of pleasure. I am endowed with powers, and I am mighty and happy. We just spoke about power. Power becomes the driving force. Now we go to verse 15 and 16, sir.
Adhyo janamanismi konyosti sadrisho maya yakshye dasyami modishya ityajnana vimohitaha aneka chitta vibhranta mohajala samavitaha prasaktaः kama bhogeshu patanti narakeshu chau.
So this verse says, I am wealthy, I own a large family. Who else? I will sacrifice to gods, I will give alms, I will make merry. Thus deluded by ignorance, enveloped in the mesh of delusion and addicted of sensual pleasures, their mind bewildered by numerous thoughts, these men of devilish disposition fall into the foul of him. So I will sacrifice, I will commit crimes, and then I will go to the Ganga to have a bath. I will give alms, I will give charity, and people will praise me. So these are the thoughts of those people of Asur Sampati. So they are deluded by ignorance. And naturally, their mind is bewildered by many thoughts. They can't think of one God. They will please thousands of gods. They will go to thousands of, they will give thousands of rupees in charity, and they will have that feel-good factor. But there is no peace or real calmness in their mind. So naturally, they go to hell. So these are the qualities. Shall we go 17?
Sir,
Yeah, sir. Huh.
No, I'm only saying that when reading through these, it's really important to remember that all of these are resident within us. You know, we must not, consider or read them as if they belong to somebody else.
No.
Yeah, I mean, and as you had rightly said, of course, you just now said this, but I only want to re-emphasize this because I feel very often we all have a blinkered view of ourselves. We consider ourselves as divine and all the rest as, lesser beings. But if anything, I would venture to say that if you look at 24 hours of the day, the Asuri tendencies would actually, in our own behavior conduct, would exceed the Devic tendencies.
Correct. Yeah.
So therefore, at every moment, we just have that sadhana becomes so important. So you have to keep trying to transcend these, these tendencies in favor of the Devic ones.
See, the worst.
That's exactly what Abhyas is.
Yeah. The worst thing on reading the scriptures is I know.
Yeah.
I know when that I know comes in finished. What do we know? We may read 10 scriptures in 10 different languages, but it still doesn't make me a better human being. Just because I know. Till I don't practice, till I don't imbibe those virtues, I remain where I am. It's a very humorous example. In the couple class, there was this couple, and the husband cooked better than the wife on weekends. So, and whenever he cooked, he said, "See, I cook better than you. The children never eat your food. All the days of the week they're grumbling." So she says, just because he cooks well, it doesn't make him a better human being. He's so arrogant. All the that used to be very funny. Is he a better human being because he cooks well? Just because he has some kind of skill, does that make him a better human being? So, so this knowledge also is kind of a skill. I may have a skill, I may be able to, explain, be a good orator, but that doesn't make me a better human being. Skills are different than actual practice of actually having those virtues. So I don't know. We always used to hear that Kabir was a weaver, there were cobblers, there were potters, there were men of those kind of professions who were great yogis. So actually knowing something is different than actually being something.
So, here I would also once again like to quote, the example of Dr. Govinda Venkateswamy, the founder of the Arvind Eye Care System. Right? As some of us would know, that's the largest eye care institution in the entire world. It's based out of Madurai and with presence in several other parts of South India. So he, he was an ophthalmologist, and but somewhere after his medical training, he developed a very peculiar form of arthritis, which was very painful, and which rendered his, fingers almost unfunctional. And yet, very laboriously, he learned how to operate on the eyes with those fingers. Did a master's or a diploma in ophthalmology. Went on to do some 100,000 surgeries in his government career on cataract, etc. Was given a Padma Bhushan or whatever is the first one, Padma Shri. And then after that, he started the Arvind Eye Care facility. The belief behind it and what he says, the essence of why he founded, was that there is a lot of needless blindness in the country, and the hallmark of humanity or individuality is to see oneself in all the rest, and to see all the others in oneself. Right? So that to me was very poignant, because why would a retired person, who's lived an illustrious life, who's done already enough, and at that time then he goes on to found something like this, and then of course take it up to be the largest and the one of the probably the best eye care institution. So that this, even a glimmer, even a hint of this expansion of identity can cause or can be the result of such wonderful good for once in the world at large, that it makes alive.
True. Yes. So we first, please.
आत्मसंभाविता स्तब्धा धनमान मदान्विताः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते दम्भेन विधिपूर्वकम्.
Intoxicated by wealth and honor, those self-conceited and haughty men perform sacrifices only in the name for ostentation, without following the sacred rituals. Now, what are the sacred rituals? The sacred rituals would be purity of mind. There are so many that are listed. These people who are overpowered by ascetic tendencies, they don't follow everything to the T. They just do as they please. So in the Upanishad, we have the Katha Upanishad, which is the story of Nachiket. And why Nachiket goes for self-knowledge, realization. The story is that this is performing a sacrifice, giving all the gold and useless things in life. But in sacrifice, you're supposed to give the good things. You're not supposed to distribute old and useless things. So Nachiket sees that, and he gets very annoyed with his father, but he doesn't know what to tell his father, how to tell his father. So he's telling his father that you're very used things. His father gets angry, so his father tells him to go away. So then he's questioning that whom will you give me to? I'm also useless in your life. Whom will you give me to? So he says, I'm going to give you to the god of death. So then Nachiket goes to Yamraj, and then he gets all the knowledge. So the thing is that people who are follow the rituals, follow the injunctions of the scriptures, they do what they want, and they feel, okay, I've done this much, so I am spared. But nobody is actually spared of their karma. Everybody has to go through it. They don't understand that. Okay, so shall we read the next verse?
अहंकारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं च संश्रिताः मामात्मपरदेहेषु प्रद्विषन्तोऽभ्यसूयकः.
Egoism, brute force, arrogance, lust and anger, and calumniating others, they despise me, dwelling in their own bodies as in those of others. So they despise me, dwelling in their own bodies. They don't pay attention to the spiritual aspect which is there, the purity of the Atma. They don't pay attention to that aspect, and they don't even think of God in others. They are arrogant, and they force, arrogance, lust, anger. They ill-treat others. They don't respect their own, the Atma within, naturally, and how can they respect the Atma without? There is total ignorance. So we'll just read these verses. Sir, you're on mute, sir.
अनहं द्विषतः क्रूरान् संसारेषु नराधमान् क्षिपाम्यजस्रमशुभान् आसुरीष्वेव योनिषु.
So, those creatures, sinful, cruel, and violent among men, I cast again and again into demonical wombs in this world. Naturally, the karmas are not okay, so they will be born in those kind of they will have those kind of births. They will get more and more arrogant, more and more proud of their wealth, power, culture, and ultimately they will have a downfall. This is what this verse is saying. Next verse.
आसुरीं योनिमापन्ना मूढ़ा जन्मनि जन्मनि मामप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिम्.
Failing to reach Arjun, those stupid persons are born like demonic wombs, and then they verily sink into down to a still lower plane. They go on sinking down. We'll read the next verse.
त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामः क्रोधस्तथा लोभस्तस्मात् एतत् त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Now he's saying desire, anger, and greed. Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. That these are the triple gates to hell, bringing about the downfall of the soul. So hell has 3 gates. Therefore, one should shun all these. So Vinoba says the path of truth is single. It's narrow. There's only one road to heaven, that is truth. Roads to hell are many. Desire, anger, and greed. And we have to shun all these 3. We have the intellect. We have the intellect which helps us to discriminate. We have to use that power and not use the power in the external world of wealth, and culture. Then the next verse.
एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिर्नरः आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयस्ततो याति परां गतिम्.
Freed from these three gates of hell, man works for his own salvation and thereby attains the supreme goal, God. So man has to take an about on. Everything is there in this world. The sun is there giving us light. We may kill or we may read. We may use it to do good action or to do bad action. Everything is there in this world for us. The instruments have been given. We have to use them and we have to work for our own salvation. It requires a lot of work. We have to work in the right way. So we'll read the next verse.
यः शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिम् अवाप्नोति न सुखं न परां गतिम्.
So he says, discarding the injunctions of the scriptures, he who acts in an arbitrary will, according to his own sweet will, such a person neither attains perfection nor supreme goal nor even happiness. So he says that the scriptures are going to tell you how to act. How can you safeguard yourself from desire, anger, and greed? The scriptures, pure scriptures, they will guide you and they will tell you what path to take.
Yeah, but suddenly now in the 23rd shloka, Shastra has been brought in.
Yeah.
So, in a way, if you this kind of insistence on Shastra Vidhi
Yeah.
has in a way stunted our in terms of innovation, in terms of experimentation,
Correct.
in terms of freedom of thought.
Yes.
Because we have insisted on Shastra Vidhi, the scripture.
Correct.
Actually,
Yeah.
29 is the guidelines given in the Gita, different chapters are good enough. We don't have to go to the Shastras.
Also a Shastra, no?
Trividhan, the 29 is good enough. Kama, Krodhas, Tatha, Lobhas, Tasmad, Etat, Trayan, Tyajed.
Sir, but the Gita is also a Shastra, no? You're right saying that this 21st shloka you're saying, right, that he has to end over here. So, did you say 21st shloka, right?
No, 23rd.
I'm saying 21st shloka, 21st. Yeah,
Sorry.
21st. I was saying in 23rd shloka, scriptures have been introduced for the first time,
Yeah,
scriptural authority.
correct.
And I think that has been responsible for our being convention bound and
Correct.
not being very innovative.
Yeah. So now,
That is 23rd.
23rd. So I'm saying it was not required if you just follow 21st.
Yes.
Kama, Krodha, Tatha, Lobha, Tasmad, Etat, Trayan, Tyajed. That would have been good enough. But I don't know why Shastra Vidhi has been introduced in this 23rd.
Sir,
This
I
is-
feel it may be. Sorry, yeah, please.
This looks like an interjection. It has been subsequently put.
no, sir, I don't think so because he's
It
basically.
doesn't sit in with the flow of the argument
Oh.
of this chapter. That's what I'm saying.
We have to first understand